My name is Clara Pierce, and I'm 32 years old. For most of my life, I've been the family's emergency contact, the unpaid accountant, and the emotional shock absorber. I'm the one they call when things go wrong, and I'm always there. It's a role I've been trained for, perfected, and somehow expected to play without question. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. If my mom could sum me up in one word, it would be responsible. She'd say it with pride, as though I were some shining example of what every parent dreams of. But if I could sum up my family in one word, it would be expensive. I work as an operations manager for an international logistics company, shipments, spreadsheets, deadlines. It's the kind of work where you're never not on your toes. My coworkers joke that my blood type is Excel, and they're not wrong. Stability is my love language. It's what I crave, what I hold on to when everything else feels like it's spiraling. But at home, stability isn't exactly what I get. In fact, if there's one thing my family has taught me, it's that I am the foundation they lean on. They call when something breaks, when the bills pile up, when the vet bill for Daisy, the dog, is too high, when they forget to cancel the phone plan or need a car insurance extension. They know I'll be there to pick up the pieces, to pay the price. The last Sunday dinner I attended was supposed to be peaceful. My mom had a roast in the oven, the smell of rosemary filling the air, and Dad sat on the couch pretending the muted football game was more important than anything else. Jenna, my younger sister, breezed in 20 minutes late, wearing an oversized cream sweater that probably cost more than my entire outfit. She kissed Mom on the cheek, dropped her designer tote on the floor, and sighed dramatically. "Do we have lemon water or just regular?" she asked, as though she'd wandered into a hotel. I was chopping parsley at the counter. "The sink works," I said, not looking up. She wrinkled her nose, the same way she used to when I offered to share my Halloween candy because hers was already gone. Mom didn't even look up. "Claire, be nice. Your sister's had a stressful week," Mom interjected. Jenna let out a long, performative breath. "You have no idea. My boss was so negative. It's hard being creative in that environment." I smiled thinly and kept chopping. Creative, that's what Mom always called it. Jenna was creative. I was careful. One word sparkled. The other sounded like beige wallpaper. As I reached for the cutting board, Aunt Rose leaned in from across the table. "So, Claire, still renting that little apartment of yours. You're not getting any younger, sweetheart." "Working on it," I said, keeping my voice even. Mom's wooden spoon tapped the oven door like a punctuation mark. "She's careful," she said proudly. "She likes things predictable. She's good with that." Then, with a soft laugh, "Besides, Claire's comfortable. She's not like Jenna. Jenna's meant for more." Jenna smiled without teeth, chin in her hand, like an influencer caught in a daydream. "I'm figuring things out," she said. "It's a journey." I felt that old sting behind my ribs, the same one that started when we were kids. When I scrubbed dishes for allowance, Jenna got surprises for trying her best. When I saved tips from my part-time job to buy a used laptop, Jenna got a new iPhone for safety. We grew up in the same house, but under completely different weather systems. Dad suddenly looked up from the couch. "Claire, grab the check when it gets here, okay?" I almost laughed. It wasn't even a question. "I forgot my wallet in the car," I said half joking. Everyone chuckled. Of course they did. It was funny because it was expected. I always pay. Later, in the living room, I told Mom I was considering a temporary relocation for work. "A project in Dublin," I said carefully. 6 months, maybe a year." She waved her hand dismissively, glass of wine balancing gracefully in her fingers. "Oh, honey, that's not realistic. Your sister needs you right now." "What does that mean?" I asked. Mom's smile thinned. "Don't be defensive. You know how Jenna is. She just needs a little runway." Jenna appeared from the hallway like she'd been waiting for her cue. She checked her reflection in the black TV screen and said softly, "You'll understand when you learn to let go a little." I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger exactly, but that old heavy recognition, the invisible weight of being the reliable one. When teachers used to say, "group project," everyone looked at me because they wanted an A without the effort. My family was just an adult version of that. I set the knife down. "I brought dessert," I said, my voice tight. From the dining room, Aunt Rose called, "You're such a sweetheart, Claire. Your parents are lucky to have you." Mom answered without lowering her voice. "Of course we are, that's what family's for." There was a pause, the kind of silence where you're supposed to smile and agree. I nodded anyway, that tiny obedient nod that keeps everything running. That was the rule. Jenna dreams, I do the dishes. Jenna finds herself, I find my wallet. That night, I drove home with the windows cracked, just enough for the cool air to sting my cheeks. My phone buzzed with a message from Mike, my boyfriend, who was working abroad. "Mike, how's Sunday dinner with the Royals?" Me taxing, literally. Mike, still footing the bill for the kingdom. Me, you could say that. He sent a laughing emoji. Then, Mike, you know you don't have to keep doing it. Me, if I stop the guilt tax doubles. Red. That was his quiet way of saying, I see you. Back home, I dropped my purse by the couch, opened in my notes app, and scrolled through a list I kept hidden in plain sight. Dates, amounts, and brief notes. $216, family phone plan, temporary. $96, car insurance, Jenna added last year. $347, vet bill for Jenna's dog, Daisy. $1,200, non-refundable apartment deposit. Some entries had stars beside them, debts I knew would never come back. At first the list was practical, then it became a diary. Every number was a tiny reminder of how far I'd stretched to keep the peace. Mom always said, family evens out. But it didn't, it just got tidier. The asks came with bows now. Could you just put it on your card for now? You're so organized, Claire, you make it easy. Jenna will pay you next month. Next month never came. I thought about the Dublin offer sitting in my inbox. Housing included, promotion, a raise, everything I'd ever worked for, wrapped up neatly. And yet, the moment I thought of accepting, Mom's voice echoed in my head. You're abandoning your family. You think you're better than us. I stared at my ceiling fan, spinning slow, hypnotic circles. Maybe I was tired of spinning, too. Some nights, I'd imagine what it would feel like to live where no one needed me. Then I'd catch myself, ashamed, because good daughters don't dream about escape. Still, that night before turning off the light, I added one last note under the others. Utilities, parents' house, cancel autopay. I didn't do it yet, but writing it felt like a small rebellion, a whisper to myself. I could if I wanted to. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't about the bills, the phone plans, the car insurance. It was about something deeper, something I couldn't ignore anymore. I spent the following week going through my notes, adding up the numbers that had been accumulating for years, the debts that I'd silently agreed to carry. It felt like a mountain, each bill, each favor, each small thing that added up, becoming heavier as time went on. My family's dependence on me was suffocating, and I was starting to feel it in every part of my body. At first, I justified it all. After all, I was the responsible one, the reliable one. Everyone else could make a mess, and I'd be the one to clean it up. It was what I was good at, right? What else could I do? But after years of doing it, I began to wonder what it would be like to just stop. The thought crept in slowly, like a whisper at the back of my mind. What if I didn't pay the phone bill this month? What if I didn't show up to pick up the pieces? What if I didn't do it anymore? But I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't ignore the way Mom would look at me when I said no, or how Dad would give me that look, the one that said I was disappointing him without saying a word. I had grown up with the idea that if you didn't sacrifice for family, you weren't really family. If you didn't give everything, you weren't doing enough. And Jenna was always the star, the one who got to dream. She got to be creative, she got to figure things out, and I was the one who made it work. I couldn't remember the last time I did something just for me, something that didn't involve a checklist or a family request or a last-minute problem that needed fixing. I couldn't even remember the last time I made a decision without thinking about how it would affect everyone else. One afternoon, as I was making coffee in my tiny kitchen, I picked up my phone. There was a new message from Mike. Mike, how's the family? Still playing the role of superhero? I smiled weakly, but the truth stung. I had become the superhero, but I wasn't saving anyone. I was just enabling them to keep asking. Me? Yeah, same old. Except now they're asking for a new level of loyalty, and I'm not sure I have it left to give. He replied with a heart emoji, but the guilt crept in, heavier than before. He wasn't wrong, though. It wasn't about saving them. It was about what I had to sacrifice to keep everything together. That night, I found myself staring at the empty apartment, the silence surrounding me like a thick fog. I could still hear the echoes of my family's voices in my head, the way they expected me to be everything for them. The way they treated me like an unpaid worker, the emotional caretaker who was always ready to step in. And then there was the Dublin offer sitting in my inbox. I had opened it a dozen times, hovered over the accept button, and then backed away. It was everything I'd worked for, the kind of opportunity that only comes once in a lifetime. Housing included, a promotion, a raise, a fresh start, everything I wanted, everything I had ever dreamed of. But as soon as I thought about taking it, the voice in my head would come back. You're abandoning your family. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over that button. What if I left? What if I really stopped? The decision seemed so simple in theory: go to Dublin, start fresh, leave everything behind. But the weight of the years spent sacrificing for them felt like it was holding me back. Could I really let go? Could I really walk away? The guilt was a constant companion, always reminding me that family was everything, that loyalty was sacred. But at what cost? At what point did loyalty turn into something toxic, something that drained me until I had nothing left? The next day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I said no. Mom called me in the morning. Her voice, as always, was soft, coaxing, like she was trying to find a way to get me to bend. She wanted me to cover another bill for Jenna, just a small one, something to tide her over. And I said no. I'd done it before, given in to the small requests, pretending it was no big deal. But this time, I felt the weight of my decision. It wasn't just a no to a bill. It was a no to everything. I can't keep doing this, Mom, I said, my voice trembling. I can't keep paying for everything. I can't keep being the one who fixes things for everyone. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then she sighed, that long sigh she always did when she was disappointed. You're being dramatic, Clara. You're the only one we can rely on. You've always been the responsible one. I paused. I wasn't sure if I was more angry or sad. Being responsible doesn't mean I have to carry everything. I'm not your safety net. Mom was quiet, and when she spoke again, it was softer. You'll regret this, sweetheart. You're changing, and I don't know if I like it. I hung up without saying goodbye. The weight of it felt like a relief, but I knew it would only last for a moment. The guilt would come back like it always did. Later that evening, Jenna called me. Clara, can you help me with a small thing? Caleb and I found a place for our new studio, and we just need a co-signer for the lease. I rubbed my temples, exhausted by the mere thought of it. Jenna, no, I can't. I'm not your co-signer. I'm not your backup anymore. She fell silent, and I could hear the faintest edge of hurt in her voice. You never believe in me. You never have. I closed my eyes, the sting of her words hitting me harder than I expected. But the truth was, I had believed in her more times than she'd believed in herself. I'd believed in her when I paid for her college tuition, when I co-signed for her car, when I covered her vet bills. But she never saw it. She never appreciated it. And now I was done. Jenna, I said softly, I've believed in you, but I can't keep doing this for you. There was silence, the kind of silence that said everything. I hung up, the weight of the decision settling over me. I wasn't just saying no to her. I was saying no to everything that had kept me tied to my family's expectations. I was saying no to the guilt, the responsibility, the never-ending demands. And for the first time, it felt like a breath of fresh air. The days after I said no felt like a new kind of quiet. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was the absence of the constant noise in my head, the noise that came from always giving in, always saying yes. My family didn't know how to react. They couldn't understand why I would turn down the requests, why I would stop being the one who picked up the pieces. Jenna kept calling, asking for help with this or that, but I didn't answer. Mom sent me messages, her tone soft but insistent. Dad remained silent, probably trying to figure out how to make me feel guilty without actually saying anything. And then there was the matter of Dublin. The offer had been sitting in my inbox for days, a beacon of freedom, but I hadn't been able to bring myself to accept it. Every time I hovered over that accept button, I heard Mom's voice in my head, "You're abandoning your family. You think you're better than us." The guilt was suffocating, drowning out the excitement I should have been feeling. But every day, I felt the weight of my decision building inside me. I was exhausted, not from work, but from the constant demands of my family. They had never let me be anything other than the one who sacrificed, and every time I did, it was like a piece of me was chipped away. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself with a kind of disbelief. How had I gotten here? How had I become the person who was always last on her own priority list? How had I allowed my family to define me for so long? I had to stop. I couldn't keep doing this. The thought felt like a rebellion in my chest. I had to take control of my life. I had to say yes to myself. The phone rang. It was Mom. I almost didn't pick up, but I knew she wouldn't stop until I did. So I answered. "Clara, we need to talk," she said, her voice dripping with that familiar concern that always masked manipulation. "It's important. Can you come by tomorrow?" I exhaled slowly. "What's this about?" I asked, already dreading the conversation. "Jenna needs your help. She's struggling, and Caleb, well, he's doing his best, but they just need someone to help get things off the ground." I felt my pulse quicken, the familiar tug of guilt creeping in. But this time I held my ground. "Mom, I told you, I'm not helping her anymore. I can't keep paying for everything." There was a pause, a long one. I could almost hear her struggling to find the right words. "Clara, you're being unreasonable. You're the only one who can help." "No, Mom," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm not the only one, and I'm not going to keep doing it. I'm done." The silence on the other end of the phone was thick, suffocating. I could feel the weight of her disappointment, but it didn't have the same power over me it once did. "Clara, you're abandoning your sister," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "She's your family." "I'm not abandoning her," I replied, a sharpness creeping into my tone. "I'm setting a boundary. There's a difference." Mom didn't say anything for a long time. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable, until she finally spoke. "I just don't understand," she said quietly, "why you're making this so hard." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. "I'm not making it hard, Mom. You're making it hard. You've taught me that love means paying for everything, but I can't do it anymore. I've been paying for permission to feel loved, and that's not love. That's a transaction." I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, and for a moment I thought she was going to say something else, something that would pull me back in. But instead, she just sighed. "I'll talk to you tomorrow," she said, and hung up. The relief that followed was immediate, but it was also fleeting, because as soon as I set the phone down, I knew what was coming next. Jenna would call. Aunt Rose would probably leave another voicemail about family and sacrifice. Dad would text, asking me to come by for a family meeting. The guilt would pour in, and I had to be ready for it. But this time, I was ready. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Jenna. "Clara, we found this cute place for the studio, and we need you to co-sign the lease. It's just your name. Please, we really need you." I stared at the message for a long time, and then I typed back without hesitation. "Me, that's not on me." It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about saying no. It was about standing up for myself for the first time in my life and not being afraid to lose their approval. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. It was Mom. "Clara, family meeting tonight. You need to be here. We need to talk." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. The old me would have caved. I would have said yes, made excuses for why I couldn't say no, and shown up. But this time, I didn't. I texted back, "I won't be there." The message sent, and for a moment I just sat there, staring at the screen. My hand trembled slightly, but I didn't feel fear. I felt something else, something unfamiliar. Freedom. The phone buzzed again. "Mom, if you won't support your sister, don't bother showing up for Thanksgiving." I actually laughed. It wasn't bitter or sarcastic. It was just relief, because for once I wasn't afraid. For once, I wasn't the one who had to bend. I opened my laptop and went back to the Dublin offer. The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting for me to make a choice. I clicked accept. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I was choosing myself. I was choosing peace. I clicked accept on the Dublin offer, and it felt like the world shifted beneath me. The cursor blinked on the screen, but everything around me felt strangely still, as if time had paused, waiting for me to catch up. I didn't know what to expect next. I didn't know how my family would react. Would they beg me to reconsider? Would they guilt-trip me into staying, into believing that I was abandoning them, that I was being selfish? Or would they simply ignore it, pretend they hadn't just lost the one person who had always been there to fix everything? What I did know was this: I was no longer the one who had to fix things. The next few days were a blur. I packed my life into a suitcase, bought a flight, and tried to tie up loose ends at work. But even though I was busy, a strange kind of peace settled over me. Every decision I made felt like an act of rebellion, not against my family, but against the person I had allowed myself to become, the person who gave everything to everyone else and left nothing for herself. The night before I was set to leave, Mike called me. His voice was steady, comforting, but I could hear the excitement in it too. "You really did it, huh?" he said, his voice light. "I think so," I said, a smile tugging at my lips. "It still feels unreal." "Are you nervous?" he asked. "A little, but mostly I feel relieved. For the first time, I'm doing something just for me. I'm not fixing anyone's life but my own." I could hear him smile through the phone. "That's huge, Clara. I'm proud of you." "Thanks, Mike. I don't know if I could have done it without you." "You've got this. You've always had it in you. I'm just happy I get to be part of your journey." The next morning, I woke up early, before the sun had even come up. My phone was already buzzing with missed calls: Mom, Dad, and Jenna. There were text messages, too, all of them urgent, all of them asking why I hadn't responded to their last-minute pleas. My mom's message read, "Please, Claire, you don't have to do this. We need you here." I stared at the screen for a moment, the guilt creeping in as it always did. But this time, it didn't paralyze me. This time, I saw it for what it was: manipulation. They weren't asking for help. They were asking for control. I turned off my phone and packed it away. It was time to let go. The airport was crowded, but everything felt strangely quiet to me. It was like I was in a bubble, just me and the journey ahead. As I boarded the plane, I could almost feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. I wasn't just leaving the city, I was leaving the version of myself that had been trapped by everyone else's expectations. The flight was long, but when the plane finally touched down in Dublin, the air was crisp and cool. There was a sense of calm that settled over me as I stepped off the plane, the chaos of my family's demands still echoing in my mind, but slowly fading away. For the first time in years, I didn't have to be anyone's savior. I took a cab to my new apartment, small but perfect. White walls, a single plant by the window, and everything organized just the way I liked it. No shared bills, no family obligations, just me. As I unpacked, I let myself breathe. I was finally living for myself. I didn't have to ask permission anymore. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to justify my decisions. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The days that followed were filled with the kind of quiet I hadn't known I craved. I walked along the canals, explored the city, and took time to cook meals for myself, simple things that felt grounding. I was learning to exist again, without the weight of everyone else's needs pulling at me. One evening, Mike visited. He came over after work, bringing takeout and a bottle of wine. He looked around the apartment, a grin spreading across his face. "You really did it," he said, looking around at the neat, empty space. "I think I had to," I replied softly. I didn't realize how much I was holding onto until I let it go. He nodded, his eyes softening. "I can see it, you look lighter." "I feel lighter," I said, a quiet laugh escaping my lips. I didn't know what it would feel like, but it's like I'm breathing for the first time in years. We ate dinner on the couch, the TV murmuring in the background. At one point, I realized I hadn't checked my phone in hours. No messages, no missed calls, no emergencies, just peace. It felt strange at first, but it was a peace I had been longing for. That night, I lay in bed and thought about everything that had led me here. I thought about the years I had spent being the glue that held my family together. I thought about the guilt that had suffocated me, the expectations that had kept me trapped. But most of all, I thought about the woman I was becoming, the woman who finally understood that peace doesn't come from constantly giving. It comes from knowing when to say no. The next morning, I opened my old notes app. The list of family expenses, debts, and promises was still there. But as I scrolled through it, I didn't feel anger or resentment. I felt gratitude. Because now I was free. I was no longer tethered to the past. I typed one final entry. I will not cause in chaos. And then I closed the app for good. As the weeks passed, I settled into my new life. Work was challenging, but it was mine. My boss was supportive, my colleagues kind. I wasn't just a background character anymore. I was the lead in my own story, and I wasn't asking anyone for permission to live it. One day, as I walked to the office, I realized something important. I had spent so much time trying to please everyone else that I had forgotten to please myself. But now, I was learning how to take up space, to choose myself first, and it felt good. Then, one evening, I received a text from Jenna. "Are you happy?" I stared at the screen for a long time, unsure of how to respond. In the past, I would have jumped at the chance to explain myself, to justify my decision. But now I realized something. I didn't owe her or anyone an explanation. I typed back, slowly, deliberately. "I hope you find what you're looking for. I just can't fund the search." She didn't reply. And for the first time, I didn't need her to.